Let's talk about wilderness areas. Now, wilderness areas are my personal favorite type of public lands designation. They can also exist across different jurisdictions. You can have wilderness areas within national parks or national forests. You can have wilderness areas on BLM land. And depending on the boundaries, you might have multiple land management agencies involved. So I thought this was a really good place to start when it comes to talking about public lands designations. The wilderness designation is the highest level of protection that federal public lands can have in the United States. Essentially, no development can take place within a wilderness area. So what is wilderness? Under the Wilderness Act of 1964, wilderness is recognized as an area where the earth and its community of life are untrammeled by man, where man himself is a visitor and does not remain. And wilderness is further defined as an area of undeveloped federal land retaining its primeval character and influence without permanent improvement or human habitation, which is protected and managed to preserve its natural characteristics. Land also has to meet 4 criteria. First is that it appears to be primarily affected by natural forces, not by the work of man. Number 2, it has outstanding opportunities for solitude or a primitive and unconfined type of recreation. Number 3, it has at least 5,000 acres of land, or it's a sufficient size that it's practical to leave that area unimpaired. Number 4, it may also contain ecological, geological, or other features of scientific, educational, scenic, or historical value. And the primary goal when managing wilderness areas is to preserve the wilderness character, along with the public purposes of recreational, scenic, scientific, educational, conservation, and historical uses. In other words, wilderness areas are places that we are preserving and not developing. And there are certain types of uses that are explicitly prohibited in wilderness areas, including the use of motorized or mechanized equipment. So this includes things like cars, motorboats, drones, and even bicycles. You can hike into a wilderness, you can ride a horse into the wilderness, you can bring your pack llama, but please leave your bike at home. There are also exceptions to these prohibitions in the events of emergencies, and in certain cases there are also exceptions for pre-established uses, especially when it comes to the use of motorboats or aircrafts. For example, there are backcountry airstrips within wilderness areas that can still be used today. Grazing is another type of activity that you might see grandfathered in. It's now been over 60 years since the Wilderness Act was passed, so a lot of the statutory requirements around reviewing and recommending wilderness areas has already passed, and we now have over 800 designated wilderness areas across the United States and Puerto Rico. We also have hundreds of wilderness study areas, which are areas that have wilderness characteristics, but they're still being reviewed and haven't gotten that official tap from Congress to be bumped up to wilderness status. And these are areas that very well could become wilderness areas in the future.